Vienna, Austria. I am showing you today 10 journals that I've made for my local bookshop. They've asked me to make a few to sell, so we'll see if they sell. But I just thought I would give you an overview of what I've done and the style that I was going for, just for inspiration for your own journals. Maybe something sparks your interest and you can apply it to your own journal. So that's why I am doing this. So let me just move some of these out of the way. Let me start off with 2 TNs. Now when you see these, you will, if you know Sheena from Luna Rose, you might recognize this style because the covers are very much inspired by Sheena. I'm obsessed with her TNs at the moment. So I wanted to give it a try, and I am very, very much in love with these and very attached to these two. But I'm going to sell them anyway because I know I can always make more. So let me just zoom you in a little bit and give you a quick flip throughs. Okay, this was the first one I made, and it's tied closed with a beautiful sari silk that I got from Etsy. The shop no longer sells these, so there's no point in me mentioning it. The actual cover is made with a Tim Holtz paper from the Memoranda paper pad. You can just see bits of it there, and I have collaged some vintage book page images, floral images. These are some postcards from the flea market. Also, this envelope is from the flea market, sewn on there as a pocket. And this is typical Sheena style with this wrapping something around the cover and then making this eyelet to put in string or ribbon or whatever to tie it. And I love, love, love that the cover has layers. I'm just, as I said, obsessed with it. Then here's another vintage postcard on the cover, as well as a photo, and this is a label from Nick the Booksmith, but I think you only can get this if you take her bookbinding course. Those are included. And here's some more collaging on the cover. Now inside in all of these, I have a pocket in the front and in the back. In the back, I always have a business card. And so this is what that looks like. I just had these done, and I'm very happy with how they turned out. On the back, they say this. Write it down. And in the front, they each have a letter that was inspired by Mrs. Cog. I think has a template somewhere. I'm not sure which video, but she has a template of a letter to include when you sell journals, and I've just adapted it to make my own version. And so this explains what is a junk journal, and I put in where the bits are from that I've included, and I've also mentioned what you can put into the journal, like what can you use it for. So I put that in the pocket here. This is another vintage letter. Here just some odd bits, flashcards. So some of these bits are actually from Happy Mails. This is a beautiful fabric tag that I made, and on the back side is the Tim Holtz memorandum paper. Beautiful vintage card, playing card that I found at a flea market recently. This is some paper from a gardener's diary from 1926, original. Here's some very brittle wallpaper that came in some Happy Mail. I'm not gonna go through all these books as detailed because it will take forever for 10 books, but for the first couple I thought I would do that. This is a part of an envelope the flap that was coming off, and I just sewed it to make a little corner tuck spot. So this is a vintage photo. I've just added this eyelet for more interest. This is from the flea market. Another flea market vintage postcard. This is something I got in Happy Mail. Just added that with a bulldog clip, and on the other side was the what do you call it, wallpaper. So here's another tuck spot. This is Tim Holtz. This is some download. I don't remember which one, unfortunately. This is a botanical book page. Some ledger paper. This is from one of my vintage floral books. Vintage ephemera here, authentic. This as well, this is from a map from the flea market. Just made a little flip out. This is just a sticker. This is one of these beautiful cigarette cards that came in Happy Mail. An old receipt. Just made a little flip down. Vintage book page. This one I got as a present. Made a little pocket on the bottom by just sewing up the book page because it was too long. And this is another very old and used postcard. Doesn't have a date, but it must be very old. Vintage ledger paper from the flea market here. I love the crinkling. Then here's just a little tab I added with a vintage receipt, and I just glued some fabric on there with a button. This is another beautiful vintage playing card that I found at the flea market. This is just vintage ephemera, both of these. This is a part of a vintage envelope I cut and made a pocket out of. This is a fabric flip. Vintage receipt. Just some collaging here. Here's just a little flip with another one of Nick's labels, a vintage playing card, and a printout. I have no idea where this came from. I've had it for a long time. So they just go in there with a paper clip. Vintage dictionary page. I've just collaged a printout of a vintage book there. Some collaging there. This was a present. Added another vintage photo there. And this is just an envelope wrapped around to make a tuck spot here and here. This is a card I got in Happy Mail, as well as this one. And I just added a little eyelet up there. These are two vintage typed letters, 1953, so those are pretty cool. Also from the flea market. Here's another beautiful cigarette card that was in Happy Mail. Here's some calligraphy that I did, just some extra paper for writing. This is from the Your Creative Studio. This is from Happy Mail. Vintage music paper. These were both from Your Creative Studio. Love the vellum. Some more writing space. This is a printout from Nazi from Amity Bloom. She has a French collection of ephemera, so I printed that. Wallpaper, beautiful vintage wallpaper I found at a at a little flea market. This came in Happy Mail. This is an original telegram congratulating for a wedding. I found a book of these at the flea market. I love, love, love these. This is a postcard that came in Happy Mail. This is just a glassine bag with another one of beautiful vintage playing cards. I just love these. Vintage receipt. Pocket made out of a, I just cut this out of a floral book. Added this Project Life card for journaling. This is an Egyptian receipt actually. It's not vintage, but I still like it. Another journaling card from Amity Bloom. Postcard I received in Happy Mail. Postcard from the flea market, empty on the back. Bingo card that I made into a tuck spot. I just cut it in half. Then I made 2 pockets here on the top. This is a printout. And this, I don't remember where I got this from. I believe this was in Happy Mail, and that just tucks right in there. Other side of that dictionary page. Here I again made a tuck spot out of a vintage floral book page. I added this, which I think is just from a vintage book that I've made into like this tag. Added a reinforcement up there and backed with some coffee stained paper. And this one is Dutch. This one was also in a Happy Mail, from a book actually that came in a Happy Mail, and I just backed it with some coffee stained paper for journaling. Vintage receipts, some collaging here. This is again a vintage like bingo card or something. Here's a card that is empty that came in Happy Mail. So here it forms a tuck spot, and I added this Happy Mail beautiful winter postcard. It's the book page, the other page side of that letter. This was also in Happy Mail. Just gorgeous. The other side of that book page where I just flipped the bottom up and sewed along the side to make a tuck spot. Another one of these fabric cutouts with a button to form a tuck spot, and this is a printout from I don't know where. Vintage calendar page from 1941. Floral book page. This one came in Happy Mail. Beautiful, beautiful. Wallpaper from Happy Mail. Some writing space underneath. Another tuck spot made out of a fragile book page. This is also from a vintage floral book, a cutout. This is also Dutch vintage ephemera, another one of those. And tuck spot in the back with some more vintage ephemera and one of these cool definition cards. Oops. And my business card. So that is the first TN. I'm so in love with this. It's really full too. This one is less full. So this one has this card on the front from the Pennsylvania Railroad. So it has a lot of railroad ephemera in here that I got from Allison. So thank you, Allison. And it ties with this beautiful red ribbon, which is not vintage. Then there's a lot of stamping in this. I bought the most beautiful vintage stamps from Allison. I will show you those in a future video. And so I used some red ink to just stamp on various places, and I think it adds so much. I love it, love it, love it so much. So here's a Tim Holtz picture that I got in Happy Mail. I just attached it with a bulldog clip to this Pennsylvania Railroad Employee Regulations cover that was on a little booklet from Allison. And here I just added one of those book pages from that regulations book. Again, the cover is made from Tim Holtz paper. This time, I think this is the French, yeah, this is from the French industrial one. In the back, it has stuck in this vintage card, annual inspection of Hillman Lodge. Like a postcard, I guess, as well. And some more vintage ephemera there. I just love these layered covers. I don't know why. So here we have the tuck spot with some more stamping. These are printed printed ledger sheets. I have some in here. I got those from I think the Old Design Shop. They have a lot of these. Again, the letter and the cover here is a scan of a vintage invoice that I received. It's from 1921. It's actually German. Here's a vintage receipt. Here's some more stamping underneath this very brittle paper that I backed with other paper. I just stamped, and you can just see it very faintly. And there's some more vintage ephemera here. This is like an old postcard. So this journal, I feel, is more masculine, although I love it a lot, so I think anyone can use it. So this is just a cutout from the industrial French Tim Holtz paper pad, the same one that the cover is made out of. Here's another stamped sewn on tuck spot with a vintage postcard, and from the same Tim Holtz paper pad, I just made this tag. So they tuck right in here. Here's another from the same paper pad. I just made this little flip thingy, added a brad here to attach this beautiful ephemera that is also from Allison. Made a little eyelet in here, added a cigarette wrapper and some more stamping there. This is again the printed ledger. I printed on both sides. Beautiful florals there. This is again from the Pennsylvania Railroad Employee Regulations book. Here a tuck spot made out of a vintage receipt. Again, I stamped there. So some of the stamps I bought from Allison are from a vintage apple orchard. So that's orchard. This is just some printed ephemera, and this is some real vintage receipt paper. This paper is actually from an original TN. It has the dots from like bullet journaling, and I just coffee dyed it. This paper is also from Allison. I just sewed around it to make a tuck spot. Stamped again here. Put in some vintage ephemera. This is some vintage ephemera that I bought from Instagram. And I will link some of the Instagram sources that I use for buying vintage ephemera in case you're interested. But you have to be careful. Some only sell to the US or ship only to the US, and some are international. So you have to be careful where you want to purchase things from. And I just added, this is an idea I stole from Nick the Booksmith. She has done this in one of her journals, and I just love it. They're just holes with hole reinforcements. Here's another pocket with the printed ledger paper. This is an authentic old German letter from 1950. I just think those are fun to include. More stamped paper sewed on as a tuck spot. Some printed ephemera made to look old. This is again the German invoice front and back that I've just printed and This is from what I bought from Instagram, I think. This is some ledger paper, and I just made this cute little tab here with the eyelet in rose gold. This is again printed. This is a vintage receipt that I just sewed around this narrow page to make tuck spots on both sides. I just stuck some ephemera in here. This is a receipt I made a little pocket out of, and I just punched a half circle here and sewed a bit there to just strengthen it. And inside I put a Tim Holtz piece of the cardstock and put on a label or a tab with another eyelet. Receipt where you can journal underneath. This is the other side of that paper I bought. I just sewed on one of these definition cards as a tab, and I attached with a paper clip just another one of those Tim Holtz papers that I just rounded the corners, added another tiny one with an eyelet. You can take this off to journal. I just glued this ledger paper on, stamped there. This is some extremely thin, almost like tissue paper that I just sewed on there. This is again a stamp that I sewed on to make a tuck spot, and again from the Tim Holtz paper with another little eyelet. This is a paper bag that came in since Happy Mail that I loved as is. It was actually not a paper bag when I got it. It was a wrapping, and I just glued it to make a paper bag. I stamped the 48 there. Another stamp here. This is the back side of the printed ledger paper. This is a postcard that came in a Happy Mail. There's a little envelope, again stamped there. And I just put in some Austrian stamps there, a whole bunch. This is the other side of that Tim Holtz thing. I just added a hole with a hole reinforcement that I have just stained with my distress ink. Here's another tuck spot I made with some stamping and some more of that printed ledger paper for extra journaling. Almost done. Tuck spot made out of vintage tickets with a check here, which is very nice and thin that you can journal on. Here's the other side of that other receipt. In the back we have a tuck spot that I made out of a totally not vintage, but it's a parking ticket, like a ticket you would get when you would park in a garage, and I just coffee stained it, put it in the oven and distressed it to make a tuck spot, and that's my business card, and that's again another printed German invoice. So that's that TN.
So good, babe, so good, babe, so good, so good, so good.